Hey guys, Ramen Eating Reaper here. So I've just finished watching Fuze on Sky Cinema through Now TV. The film is directed by David Mackenzie, the filmmaker behind Hell or High Water, and despite it being a Sky original, it actually got a cinema release back in April. Unfortunately, I didn't get the chance to see it on the big screen because it released the same weekend as Super Mario Galaxy, so it was hard to actually find show times. So I sat and waited for the Sky Cinema release, and the day finally came. This is one I was actually really looking forward to watching. The whole premise just sounded really, really cool. It's got a great cast. And in general, this looked to be the kind of like slick, fast-paced thriller that is just right up my street. But does the film deliver on the fast-paced thrills of its novel premise? Let's find out. So in the film, an old, unexploded World War II bomb is found on a construction site in London's Edgware Road. Police quickly issue an evacuation notice and cordon off the site, while the army races against the clock to defuse the explosive before it can detonate. However, nearby to the site, a group of thieves uses the evacuation as the cover they need to pull off an audacious heist. But not all is as it seems, as there is more to both jobs than is initially suspected, as loyalties are put to the test. So this is exactly the kind of film that you can look at and know pretty much what you're in for going in, and sometimes that's all you need. And as it turns out, it delivers on that. While you can argue it doesn't quite live up to the full potential of its cracking premise, it is a reliably solid film that does pretty much exactly what it says on the tin. Again, the whole premise and setup here is such a cool one, and it's to the film's credit that it is incredibly, propulsive with a ton of forward momentum. Pretty much getting the ball rolling right from the word go. Using the opening scene to establish the stakes, and from there does not let up. This is very much an all thriller, no filler kind of film, and it really delivers on that. It is a lean and efficiently paced film that makes use of every second of that tight 90-minute runtime, as it builds plenty of suspense throughout and does actually a pretty damn good job of it. Obviously, there's the time-related stakes and the sort of looming threat of this old bomb and the sort of will it, won't it in regards to it, actually exploding. And on the flip side, there's also the sort of, stress and, pulse racing tension of this heist that's going on at the same time, and the sort of, the stakes and the risk of something going wrong along the way. And it is incredibly compelling stuff, filled with plenty of that sort of classic Michael Mann-esque competency porn throughout. It is, very, very well done. Now, you can argue, yes, that it is not the most original execution of such a cool premise, because, yeah, you'll likely be able to predict most of what happens in the film. It's pretty familiar storytelling, and you'll likely be able to guess a lot of it. But it is to the film's credit that it knows this, and because of its, tight and very short runtime, it never overstays its welcome and just very much commits to, just delivering exactly the thrills you want from it. And on that front, yeah, I can't be too upset at it for that. But I think it helps that the film is carried along by a very reliably strong set of performances. Obviously, at the core of this, we have Aaron Taylor Johnson, a potential name in the hat to be the next James Bond. as Major Tranter, who is a very reliably commanding and highly competent and focused presence. This very professional and competent soldier. He's also a little bit troubled mentally. Quite interesting characterization there, and Aaron Taylor Johnson does do a good job of it. There's also good performances from Theo James as Corrales, doing a decent South African accent, and also Sam Worthington. Obviously, the two of them are very much the leading figures in the heist, and the two of them are very, very good, again, as these very skilled thieves who are also very much tested when the job gets a little bit deeper than either of them had initially suspected. Both of them do a very good job. There's also a very good performance from Gugu Mbatha Raw as the police officer who very much takes charge of the whole job. Again, a very skilled, competent, and commanding presence throughout. She does a very, very good job. There's also a small role for Honor Swinton Byrne, the daughter of Tilda Swinton. Yeah, she does a decent job. And I think that's a pretty notable supporting presence there. In general, I think everyone does do a good job. They very much know exactly the film they're in and commit. So there's a very uniformly solid set of performances, even if there's not too much to all of these characters beyond sort of what the plot needs you to know about them. Don't get me wrong, it does do a decent job of adding these layers to them as things progress and get deeper than initially expected. But but again, all that stuff is sort of very much plot specific stuff, and so it's perhaps not the most emotionally rewarding of watches. It's also, in terms of actual presentation, not exactly the most sort of energetic. Like, don't get me wrong, it very much does what it needs to do in terms of filmmaking, but there's not a lot of distinctive flair or personality that might have allowed it to stand out that bit more. A lot of fairly basic medium shot, reverse shot sequences throughout, but even then, it's not really about the filmmaking. It's very much about the characters and the situations they are in. And so it obviously doesn't need to be the most dynamic piece of filmmaking ever, as it very much commits to just focusing on the job at hand. And yeah, it does do a very good job, very much building suspense and tension throughout to really keep you invested as it goes along, with a fairly decent score that does do a good job of building that sense of energy, right through to a final act full of twists and turns, most of which you'll likely see coming, as it does sort of telegraph them, but it does deliver them quite reliably and does do a good job of rooting them in the characters, as in a quite well done final sequence that, while you can argue is a bit tacked on, does do a good job of adding to the characters and building that sort of history that that makes the twists, predictable as they may be, feel earned. And so yeah, on that front, I came out of this having had a reliably good time. Overall, Fuze, while not the most original execution of such a novel premise, is a reliably suspenseful and tightly paced thriller filled with reliably solid performances. Overall, Fuze gets a 7. So, let me know down in the comments, have you seen Fuze? What did you think of it? Did you get the chance to see this on the big screen? Let me know what the cinema experience for it was like, and yeah, don't forget to hit the thumbs up button if you enjoyed, don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you're new, and don't forget to turn on post notifications so you don't miss an upload.
other.